There are some things God whispered in the quiet that were never meant to echo in the loud. Some truths so sacred, so divinely tailored to your journey that sharing them too soon or with the wrong spirit could cost you peace, progress, and perspective. I came to tell somebody today, there's a secret in you so powerful, so destiny altering that if you're not careful, you'll give it to people who haven't earned the right to carry it. This isn't about pride, it's about protection. Protection of purpose, protection of the process. Because when God begins to elevate you in private, the temptation is to announce it publicly. But every promise isn't ready for exposure. Every dream doesn't need applause. Sometimes the secret is the safety. And sometimes the regret is in the revealing. You were never called to explain what God told you in a season of intimacy to people still stuck in a season of ignorance. If they didn't fast with you, if they didn't cry with you, if they didn't war with you, they're not qualified to interpret what God showed you. Your secret isn't just a whisper from heaven, it's a seed. And planting it in the wrong soil can kill what God was trying to grow. So before you speak on what you saw in that vision, before you testify about that plan, before you tweet that revelation God gave you at 3 a.m. when nobody else was awake, ask yourself, is this secret meant to be spoken or is it meant to be stewarded? Because some of the most painful regrets are born not from what we did wrong, but from what we revealed too early to people who didn't have the capacity to carry it. This secret you hold, it's powerful and it's sacred. Guard it like your life depends on it because it just might. Some secrets are seeds, not announcements, and planting them in the wrong soil will cost you the harvest. This truth is one of the most overlooked principles in the journey of purpose and spiritual maturity. Because we live in a world that rewards exposure, a culture that feeds on oversharing, and a generation that often confuses vulnerability with visibility, we've grown comfortable unveiling what was only meant to be nurtured. But God operates in seasons. And in many cases, the season of revelation is not the same as the season of release. Just because you received a word doesn't mean you're supposed to release that word. Just because you had a breakthrough in your spirit doesn't mean it's time to speak it out into the atmosphere for everyone to handle. Some things must grow in silence before they can stand in public. The nature of a seed is that it's buried, it's hidden, it's isolated, it's surrounded by pressure, darkness, and transformation. A seed is not just a beginning, it's a process. And just like any living thing, it needs the right environment to develop. Not every soil can carry the weight of what God is growing in you. You have to know the difference between fertile ground and toxic ground. Fertile ground will protect the seed, feed the seed, and water the seed. Toxic ground will suffocate it, twist it, and cause it to rot before it ever takes root. Some of us have been planting our dreams, our revelations, our visions in soil that doesn't have the nutrients to handle it. And then we wonder why it never grew. It wasn't that the seed wasn't powerful. It was that the soil was unprepared. There are conversations you've had where you walked away feeling smaller, not because what you said lacked substance, but because the person you said it to lacked the spirit to receive it. That's how powerful secrets are. They don't just carry information, they carry intention. They carry weight. They are sacred pieces of your destiny that deserve discernment. When you treat a secret like a headline instead of a holy instruction, you invite opposition that wasn't meant to meet you yet. Sometimes you tell a person your vision, and now you're wrestling not just with your own doubts, but with theirs too. Their skepticism becomes your second voice. Their fear becomes your new ceiling, all because the seed was planted in soil that couldn't believe, couldn't cover, couldn't understand. And it's not always malicious. Sometimes the people you share with genuinely love you, but love doesn't equal alignment. Just because they love you doesn't mean they get the blueprint. Some people love you in your now, but can't comprehend your next. They can handle the you they've known for years, but they get uncomfortable when you start walking in revelation, when you start shifting, when you start dreaming outside the lines they drew around your life. So they question you not out of hatred, but out of fear. And when that fear falls on your seed, it stunts its growth. It makes you second guess what God clearly told you. It makes you shrink a dream that was never meant to be small. You've got to understand that heaven has a timing system. God doesn't just give vision, he gives timing. And the enemy is a master at using premature exposure as a weapon. If he can't steal the seed, he'll try to force you to plant it too early. He'll send people who feel right but aren't rooted in your season. He'll pressure you with impatience. He'll make you crave validation so badly that you give away the secret just to feel seen. But being seen without being ready is a curse, not a blessing. Some of the most dangerous moments in a believer's life are the ones where they are visible before they are stable. And too often that visibility came from revealing something sacred to the wrong person at the wrong time. When God plants something inside of you, a word, a vision, a strategy, an idea, it's holy ground. It's not meant for the group chat. It's not ready for social media. It's not supposed to be crowd tested. That secret is your assignment, your intimacy, your hidden place with God. And the moment you treat it like content instead of covenant, you break trust with the one who gave it to you. Some things were only ever meant for your spirit, your journal, and your prayer time. Not because they'll never come to pass, but because how they come to pass is dependent on your ability to protect them. We see this all throughout Scripture. Joseph shared his dream with people who didn't have the capacity to handle his destiny. The dream wasn't the problem, his timing was. He planted a divine seed in the soil of jealousy and immaturity, and it activated warfare he wasn't ready for. Now, God used it. God always uses it. But what could have grown in peace had to survive in a pit. What could have been a journey of preparation became a journey of pain. And while the dream still came to pass, it came through betrayal, isolation, and imprisonment. Not because the dream was wrong, but because the secret was mishandled. It takes spiritual maturity to know what to say, when to say it, and who to say it to. That's what discernment is. Being led by the Spirit, not by your emotions. Sometimes the desire to share comes from a good place. You're excited, you're full of faith, you want to testify, but discernment will whisper, not yet. Keep watering, keep praying, keep nurturing. Some things don't need celebration. They need cultivation. And if you don't learn how to cultivate in private, you'll never be trusted with the fullness of what God wants to do in public. You're not crazy for keeping it to yourself. You're not prideful for being silent. You're not antisocial, guarded, or paranoid. You're strategic. You're spiritual. You're a good steward of the seed, because secrets that are God-given are also God-guarded. And he often watches how you handle the secret before he reveals the promise. It's not about hiding, it's about honoring. Honoring what was entrusted to you. Honoring what cost you tears, prayers, and warfare. Honoring the voice that spoke it into your spirit in the first place. Not every secret is meant to be shouted. Some are meant to be shown. In due season, when the roots are deep and the fruit is undeniable. Premature exposure of a divine plan invites voices that weren't assigned to your destiny. What God gives in secret is meant to be stewarded with spiritual sensitivity, not handed over for public consumption before its appointed time. In a world obsessed with announcing, there is a danger in revealing something sacred just to satisfy a moment of vulnerability or a craving for validation. Every divine plan has a divine covering, and when that covering is stripped too soon, it invites interference, opposition, and confusion from sources that were never supposed to have access to the blueprint. There are people in your life who are not inherently evil, but they are not spiritually aligned with the assignment God has placed over you. Their insight may be rooted in experience, but not revelation. Their advice may be logical, but not anointed. When you share prematurely, you subject your divine plan to opinions that were never meant to shape it. You begin to question what you once received with clarity. You begin to edit what was given to you in raw obedience. You start doubting, delaying, and sometimes even abandoning because someone without spiritual vision started speaking on something they could never understand. The more voices you let into the conversation too soon, the harder it becomes to hear the original voice that gave you the plan. Some things were only meant to be built in silence. God often constructs greatness in obscurity because greatness cannot survive under constant scrutiny when it's still in fragile form. Premature exposure puts pressure on the promise that it wasn't built to carry yet. You're trying to manage people's questions, their critiques, their doubts, while still trying to figure it out yourself. And in the process, you start catering your decisions to their expectations instead of God's instruction. You start pivoting out of fear, trying to please people who were never supposed to participate. What started as God's plan becomes a group project. And every time a new voice speaks, the plan shifts until it no longer resembles what God originally told you in prayer. When God gives a divine plan, he also gives divine protection, but that protection assumes obedience. Obedience not just in doing, but in timing. If you move outside of the timing, you move outside of the covering. You're exposed, vulnerable, susceptible to attacks you weren't supposed to face yet. There's a reason Jesus didn't start his ministry at 12, even though he was found teaching in the temple. There's a reason he told certain people not to tell anyone what he had done. There's a reason he withdrew often into solitude. The timing of a divine plan is just as holy as the plan itself. Rushing it is not faith. It's pride disguised as urgency. Sometimes the enemy doesn't have to destroy your plan. He just has to distract you by using the wrong voices. He knows if he can't stop the assignment, he can derail the process. All it takes is one conversation with someone who doesn't carry your vision, and suddenly your momentum stalls. You start analyzing instead of obeying. You start looking for signs that weren't promised, confirmations that were never necessary. You start trying to explain spiritual things to natural minds. And you wonder why your clarity has gone cloudy. It's not that the plan stopped being divine. It's that you let too many voices pollute what God whispered in purity. There are people who mean well but will kill what you're carrying because they don't understand how sacred it is. They'll ask the wrong questions, speak fear into your faith, suggest shortcuts, or wrap the process in so much doubt that you begin to hesitate where you once stood boldly. And it's not always the enemy who does the most damage. Sometimes it's friends, mentors, or even family members who don't have the spiritual bandwidth to grasp what you've been entrusted with. You have to know when to be silent. You have to know when to shield what's still in formation. You have to know how to guard your womb while the vision is still gestating. God is not obligated to protect what you expose outside of his timing. That's a hard truth, but it's necessary. He'll still love you. He'll still walk with you, but he may allow you to learn from the pain of premature revelation, not to punish you, but to mature you, to teach you the weight of carrying something holy, to make you wiser, more discerning, more dependent on his voice. Every divine plan comes with instruction, and sometimes the instruction is wait. Sometimes the instruction is don't tell them yet. Sometimes the instruction is just walk it out and let them see it later. There is a sacred strength in silence. When you don't feel the need to explain yourself, when you're not seeking approval, when you can carry the weight of the promise without needing others to hold it for you. That's the mark of spiritual maturity. Not just the ability to act on what God said, but the ability to protect what God said, to let it grow roots in your heart before you share it with the world, to keep your eyes on him, not on the reactions of people, because people are fickle. They will cheer for you one moment and question you the next. And if you expose your divine plan too soon, you'll end up letting their applause or their silence determine your next step. It's not about being secretive out of fear. It's about being intentional out of reverence. Reverence for the fact that God chose you for something sacred. Reverence for the timing He ordained. Reverence for the process He designed uniquely for you. And when you expose that prematurely, you invite warfare that wasn't scheduled for your season. You open the door to comparison, competition, and counterfeit voices trying to redirect what God made clear. You start performing instead of progressing. You start performing instead of becoming. And in all that noise, the original plan gets lost. That divine plan God gave you, it's holy. It's not a marketing campaign. It's not a talking point. It's not for the timeline. It's a spiritual instruction that needs protection, incubation, and alignment. It needs your yes, not your exposure. It needs your obedience, not your explanation. The more sacred the assignment, the more strategic the silence. Because when the time comes, the fruit will speak for itself. The manifestation will be undeniable. But until then, keep it in the secret place. Keep it in the place where no voices can distort it. Keep it in the presence of the one who gave it to you. God didn't whisper it to the crowd. He whispered it to you because it was never meant for everyone. There's something deeply personal about the way God communicates purpose. He doesn't shout it from the mountaintop for everyone to hear. He speaks in the stillness, in the hidden spaces, in the places where it's just you and Him. That alone should tell you something. If it was meant for the masses, it would have been announced. But if it was whispered to you, if it came through a dream no one else had, a burden no one else feels, a fire no one else understands, then that's confirmation that it's been custom tailored for you alone. And when something is custom made, you can't expect it to fit everyone else. There's a danger in assuming that everyone around you will recognize what God has placed inside you. They won't. Some will minimize it, others will misinterpret it, and some will even mock it. Not because they're evil, but because they weren't in the room when God spoke it. They didn't feel what you felt. They didn't hear what you heard. They didn't cry those tears in that prayer room. They weren't there when your spirit was being stretched and your mind was being renewed. So of course they won't understand. They weren't meant to. The secret wasn't given to a group. It was deposited into you. And when God deposits something into you, it becomes your responsibility to carry it with reverence. The problem is we live in a world that trains us to crowdsource our convictions. We ask people what they think before we ask God what He meant. We post things hoping for confirmation instead of sitting in silence long enough to receive revelation. And in doing so, we dilute the power of what was supposed to be intimate. That whisper was a holy transaction. It was heaven reaching down into your life with purpose and intent. But when you expose it to too many interpretations, you risk losing clarity. You let too many hands touch what only God should be shaping. And before long, that pure whisper turns into noise. You can't hear Him clearly anymore because you've allowed too many voices to speak over what He said. You have to trust that if God chose to whisper it to you, then He also equipped you to handle it. He knew your past and still whispered it. He knew your insecurities and still gave it. He knew your history, your mistakes, your weaknesses, and still placed something holy in your spirit. That's not a coincidence. That's divine strategy. He saw something in you that made you the right vessel. And when God selects a vessel, He doesn't always consult the crowd. He doesn't need to. He doesn't need group approval to release individual purpose. That means you may be the only one who understands it at first. You may be the only one who believes it. You may have to carry it through seasons of isolation and misunderstanding, but that doesn't make it less real. In fact, it makes it more sacred. Think about Moses. God didn't call a committee to the burning bush. He called Moses alone on the backside of the wilderness. That encounter wasn't witnessed by anyone else. It was a private calling with a public consequence. Moses had to walk back into Egypt with nothing but a whisper and a staff. He had no proof of the encounter, just the residue of God's presence on him. And yet that whisper changed nations. But imagine if Moses had walked away from the bush and gone to a group of Israelites saying, I just heard this voice in a flame and I'm going to lead you out. They would have looked at him crazy. They did. Because when you're the only one who received the whisper, you're often the only one who can truly carry it. This is why stewardship matters. Not just the stewardship of resources or influence, but the stewardship of revelation. What do you do when God gives you something no one else has seen? How do you protect the whisper when the crowd demands a show? Can you be trusted to carry what hasn't been confirmed by others? Because that's the test. Will you still move when no one claps? Will you still build when no one believes? Will you still say yes when you're the only one who heard the invitation? The ones who carry heaven's whispers are often the ones who must walk roads others don't understand. And that's the price of sacred instruction. Obedience without applause. It's not that other people are against you. It's that they weren't in alignment to receive what you were given. And the moment you start seeking their understanding, you run the risk of watering down your obedience to fit their comfort. You were not called to be comfortable. You were called to be obedient. And obedience often looks strange to those who weren't there when the assignment was given. It won't always make sense to your circle. It may not align with your resume. It may contradict your upbringing or confuse your community. But the whisper is not about agreement. It's about alignment. You're not crazy for hearing what they didn't. You're not arrogant for walking in confidence. You're not reckless for trusting what God showed you. You are chosen. And chosen people often carry lonely assignments, but loneliness is not the same as being lost. Sometimes God isolates before he elevates. He will pull you away from the noise so that you can be tuned in to his voice. He will remove the distraction so you can carry the instruction. And in that isolation, you will begin to develop not just the vision, but the voice to protect it. Because carrying a whisper requires strength. It requires spiritual maturity. It requires the discipline to move even when you can't fully explain. You have to get comfortable with being misunderstood. You have to be okay with nodding and smiling when people try to fix something they were never called to build. You have to stop explaining what was meant to be walked out, because the whisper is not about explanation, it's about execution. God will prove it in time. He will bring confirmation through fruit, but until then, protect the purity of what you heard. Don't let fear make you forfeit it. Don't let loneliness convince you to expose it. Don't let impatience push you to announce something that was only meant to be acted upon. When God whispered it to you, he wasn't looking for your circle to understand. He wasn't hoping for likes, for support, for consensus. He was looking for surrender. He was testing your heart. He was seeing if you would still move with nothing but a whisper and a word. And if you can be trusted with that, if you can carry what's invisible until it becomes undeniable, then you're exactly the kind of person God chooses to do the impossible through. Not the loudest, not the most visible, but the most obedient, the most faithful, the most willing to protect what was never meant for everyone. Not everyone who claps for you is called to carry your calling. Protect your promise from counterfeit connections. There is a sacredness to your calling that demands discernment, because applause is not always affirmation and support is not always submission to the same spirit. Some people are attracted to your light but have no oil to sustain it. Some cheer for your journey but secretly hope you never outgrow their reach. Others are drawn to the visibility of your elevation, but lack the integrity to help you protect what you're building. When God entrusts you with a promise, it becomes your responsibility to guard the integrity of it, not just from enemies, but from counterfeit allies who wear the costume of support, but carry the spirit of sabotage. We often assume that anyone who shows up, claps for us, reposts us, or celebrates our progress is a divine connection. But discernment tells a deeper story. Discernment reveals motives. Discernment exposes hidden agendas. It doesn't just ask, are they clapping? It asks, why are they clapping? Is it because they see God's hand on your life, or because they want proximity to your platform? Are they clapping because they believe in your purpose, or because they want access to the benefits of your obedience without paying the price for their own? These are the questions that protect you when elevation invites visibility. Because with visibility comes imitation, with calling comes counterfeit, with promise comes pressure. The weight of your calling is not meant to be carried by everyone in your circle. Some people are great friends, but terrible stewards of vision. They love you, but don't know how to protect what you carry. They mean well, but offer poor counsel. They support you until the cost of your growth begins to confront their stagnation. And suddenly, the clapping grows quiet. The encouragement turns into comparison. The connection that once felt divine now feels draining, not because the calling changed, but because exposure revealed what character concealed. God will allow certain seasons of elevation to show you who was assigned to your destiny and who was just assigned to your comfort. You have to be spiritually alert enough to know when someone's interest in your journey is not rooted in alignment, but in attachment. Alignment strengthens you. Attachment drains you. Alignment pushes you to obey God more deeply. Attachment pulls you into performance, manipulation, and emotional dependency. Some people will call themselves your covering, but leak your secrets. Others will walk with you until your obedience exposes their disobedience. And still others will clap publicly, but compete with you in private. These are not always enemies. Sometimes they are people you love, people you've walked with for years, people who were assigned to one version of you, but can't handle the next dimension of your calling. The danger of counterfeit connections is that they often mimic covenant. They say the right things, they show up in the right moments, but over time you begin to sense the tension, a quiet undermining of your confidence, a subtle redirection of your priorities, an ever-present pressure to include them in decisions God never told you to involve them in. What begins as partnership turns into control. What began as celebration turns into jealousy. And if you're not careful, you'll start editing your calling to keep the peace with people who were never called to carry it with you. You'll start delaying obedience to maintain loyalty. You'll choose comfort over clarity. God did not design your calling to be dictated by emotional attachments. He designed it to be led by the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit does not always lead you to convenience. He leads you into consecration. Consecration that requires cutting ties with people who can't go where you're going. Consecration that demands you walk alone at times, even when you'd rather be surrounded. Consecration that protects the purity of your promise, even when it breaks your heart to do so. Because carrying something sacred means you can't be casual about your connections. It means you don't just ask, do they love me, but are they assigned to me? David had to learn this. He was anointed in front of people who didn't clap. He was chosen while still in the field, overlooked by those closest to him. When he rose in visibility, Saul celebrated him at first, but Saul's applause turned into envy. His approval turned into attacks, because people will love you as long as your growth doesn't outpace their comfort, as long as your obedience doesn't highlight their compromise, as long as your light doesn't shine on their shadows. And when that happens, the same voices that once cheered you on can become the ones that try to silence you. That's why you must be careful Every connection is not covenant. Every voice is not validation. You cannot afford to confuse connection with assignment. Just because someone walks with you doesn't mean they're walking with God concerning you. Some people are sent to observe, not to build. Some are sent to test your ability to protect what you carry, and some are sent as distractions wrapped in friendship, mentorship, or opportunity. This is why discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Without it, you'll mislabel critics as counselors and partners as parasites. You'll trust people with your vision who weren't designed to see it. And you'll give access to people who were only ever supposed to witness from a distance. Protecting your promise doesn't mean walking in fear. It means walking in wisdom. It means being prayerful about who you allow to speak into your life. It means weighing their fruit, not just their words. It means noticing how your spirit responds when you're around them. Do you feel more focused or more confused? More surrendered or more anxious? Do they push you closer to God or pull you closer to their approval? Your spirit will always know what your emotions try to excuse. That uneasiness you feel is not drama, it's discernment. Jesus himself modeled this. He had the crowd, but he also had the 12. And even among the 12, he had 3. And even among the 3, there were moments when he went alone. Because not every moment of revelation is meant to be shared. Not every mountain is for the crowd. Some are for solitude. Some are for encounters too deep to be diluted by wrong company. If Jesus, in his perfection, managed his inner circle with such intentionality, how much more must we do the same? The louder your calling becomes, the quieter your circle must be. This calling you carry is too costly to be handled carelessly. There are promises that require you to walk away from comfort, from codependency, from counterfeit alliances dressed up as divine partnerships. There are seasons where God will strip the applause to show you who's real. There are moments where the pruning of your relationships is not punishment, but preservation, because God knows that who walks with you can either strengthen what he's building or sabotage it from the inside. He is more committed to your becoming than your comfort, more invested in your promise than your popularity. And when he begins to remove people, silence the noise, and reveal the truth behind the claps, it's not rejection, it's protection.